let's go ahead and talk about the different sort of styles of film scoring, because film scoring is such a massive thing, and there's so much involved in film scoring, and there's so many different types of styles. Of course, you know, we've seen composers throughout the years really innovate their style, whether it's Harry Gregson Williams, Hans Zimmer, one of my friends, an unbelievable composer, Daniel James. They each develop their own style, and really when we can take these different styles and meld it into one style, and to overall create an all original sound, but having been inspired by other, you know, composers. So the idea at first, maybe for some composers, is of course to try to imitate the composer they're wanting to get to the quality of. But of course, one of the most important things is developing an original sound. And having watched Daniel James for, you know, the past couple years, he's really developed his own individual sound, and that's taking him some extraordinary places. He just moved to LA. I'm going to meet with him this October down in LA and see Harry Gregson Williams speak, actually. So I've really just come to grips overall throughout my music career with how different composers and how different musicians develop their own sound. If you look at epic fantasies like Game of Thrones, perhaps, that's going to be so much different from how Howard Shore dealt with scoring Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. You know, different small things such as orchestration, such as harmony, such as the use of sound design, such as the use of instrumentation, well, which is pretty similar to orchestration, but a little bit different, having to do with, because instrumentation, really, when we're talking about instrumentation, we're talking about what instruments sort of we're using. So for Trevor Morris in Vikings, it was of course all those really old Scandinavian instruments that they, you know, that really sound cool in the score. Rami Djawadi on Game of Thrones also had that that really cool vibe when it comes to the type of instruments that he used. When I usually talk about orchestration, and I've studied orchestration is how all those instruments go together well, and orchestration works so hand in hand with harmony, and those two together, if you have those two nailed, it really is great. Of course, you know, this genre right here, action/battle music, has sort of such a variety throughout, you know, the past 100 years. You have composers like Jerry Goldsmith and Bernard Herrmann, who sort of set the stage for so many different composers today, really to write this type of music. And you've really seen that evolution take place in such a beautiful way. And now we're at a point where it's become quite similar in how composers handle you know, action music, or how they handle fantasy music, because we've gotten used to people accepting one specific style of music, and we've gotten used to accepting one specific sort of aesthetic in music. And I think that, well, when it comes to cinematic music in general nowadays, so I think that really there has to be just sort of people who break through and sort of show the world how this type of thing can be so much better than what we have now, and be innovative with how they deal with that, and really just be that sort of 1 out of 1,000 that comes up with this really cool idea and that really impresses people, and it starts a new niche. We see it with clothing, we see it with all these different types of things. We saw it with, you know, again, my friend Daniel James. Nobody had really ever seen that, you know, unbelievable of sound design, use of percussion, and of course what he did for the community, which are those online streams. Nobody had really ever seen that before. Love themes, those are, you know, I've written a few love themes before, and I'm going to go ahead and play you one of them, just to sort of talk about what makes a love theme. This is actually what I'm going to play, a score I wrote for a film called Justice League, and this film really called for a modern take on the love theme. Let me go ahead and bring this up here. So here is the overall love theme represented at the beginning of this track. So on that one, the whole, the theme, and that's the whole idea with love themes in specific. It's a type of music that really calls for simplistic themes. But yeah, so that period drama is a really cool style that I personally love because of the use of really smart orchestration. Like when I was watching an interview of John Lunn, and John Lunn was talking about his time scoring Downton Abbey, which of course has some unbelievable themes and thematic material and unbelievable use of orchestration and harmony. But what he was really talking about is in that series specifically, since it took place in the 1920s, he wanted to immerse the people in the 1920s using music. So the first thing that he went to is, how was the music written back in those days? So then, of course, it got to a point to where the most evident thing was harmony. And was orchestration. So he used a chamber orchestra to record that score, and it really comes out in the final product, and you really feel immersed in that time period. And the theme at the beginning, which is the dun 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 dun. He said that he simplified the harmony to appeal to a wider audience, but that theme, in specific, since it's used throughout the whole entire score with such sincerity and with such a purpose, it really melds the whole entire thing together and really, acts as sort of like a thread throughout the whole entire series. So whenever a really important part comes, that theme comes in. And that's something that is really important that we sort of underestimate. The Harry Potter film, perhaps, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, composed by Alexandre Desplat. On the opening cue, so Lily's theme, what ended up happening is that, just to give you a backstory, Lily is the mother of Harry Potter. So at the end of the movie, or sort of near the middle, when Snape dies and he says, Harry, you have the eyes of your mother, immediately that theme comes in. And you don't really know why it makes sense, but it makes sense. And the reason why it makes sense, of course, is because it's the theme, written for his mother. So it really works so well, and themes are written with such a purpose. And that's one thing that has really characterized Howard Shore's music. It's the fact that he'll spend weeks and weeks and weeks simply writing themes to accommodate to that character. And there's so many, like I said, there's so many different characteristics that go into what makes a theme. So if we look at, let's just say the Mirkwood theme. It's the Mirkwood theme for The Hobbit. I believe it was the second Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug. The Mirkwood theme is full of sort of alleloric, atonal type string textures and brass textures, and is really just sort of all over the place and creepy. And it has a very sort of mysterious harmony. So it has some tonality mixed in there, but overall, it's a very sort of atonal piece. And that really comes through when it comes to what you see on screen. So, and of course, the Shire theme. You have those really small, the piccolo, which carries the theme throughout the whole entire piece. And it's the perfect thing to describe this sort of beautiful land that they call the Shire in the movies. So that specific instrument went with that specific place. And I think that us composers, we have so much. We have the availability to pretty much do whatever we want in a film score, as long as it makes sense, as long as it punctures the person's emotions and does what you want it to do and what the director wants it to do. We have so much room to be able to do what we want. And if you look at, let's just say the Harry Potter scores again, when I was watching the behind the scenes of Alexandre Desplat talking about composing for that score and many of his scores in general, one of the main things that he threw out there was the fact that, I could bring in a mandolin for 2 seconds and then take it out of the whole score, and it's just this sort of little, it's this little spice, almost like if you were to just put a little cinnamon in something, a little salt in something. It's this little spice, and it really adds to the overall flavor of the dish, but it isn't necessarily that evident. So that's one of the really cool things about film music, is that we have the availability to just go anywhere we want, and to go, if we're scoring a film that takes place in, medieval China, we can go do the research and find out what instruments were used in that time period, and we can use those instruments in that score and really just immerse these people, not necessarily even using just, harmony and different harmonic aspects that they would have used back then, but using literal instrumentation to get across what you're trying to say. And that's a really cool thing that a lot of composers have gotten good at recently, and that I really look forward to exploring in the future, especially if I get like a medieval film or something like that. That would be really cool. All right, let's see here. What's the relationship like with the director? That's a really complex thing to say because, or a question to ask, because the relationship with the director, when it comes to the composer, is one of the most important aspects. Because if you really think about it, it's been said by multiple people. It was said on the Hollywood Roundtable with Hans Zimmer and Alexandre Desplat, but one of the most important things to remember is that the composer is a filmmaker. The composer has to realize, where did these characters come from? What are these characters' motivations? What's going to happen in the next 5 minutes that we can use music to build up to this climactic moment? We have to realize all these different storytelling aspects to be able to dive into this film with the utmost confidence and the utmost, that's one of the most important things, confidence, when you're going into a film. And that's why having that toolbox full of these little harmonic tips, or these little orchestration tips, or these little music production tips, having Harry Gregson Williams' piano reversal idea in your head when you're going in to write a score, it's unbelievable having the availability to just pull these things out of nowhere. Think of it like a toolbox. Like if you need this specific thing, you just grab it out and you use it, and you can mix them together to create different things. So, I heard Daniel James talk about how he pretty much will create these, drum loops and stuff, and he'll export it, and then he'll bring it in when he's writing a new tune. I do the exact same thing, but interestingly enough, I listen to, classical music. I listen to jazz music. I listen to these different styles of music, and I'll actually write down in a sort of Word document what are the type of things that I'm really getting out of this piece, and that's the most important thing when it comes to what we get from other styles of music. I realize that a lot of people might have specific styles of music that they really dislike, such as country or hip hop for me. But there's so many different things rooted in music that there might be at least one thing that you would be able to get out of it. So when it comes to, maybe it's a drum beat, maybe it's a drum sound, maybe it's the way that this mixer mixed this score. There's always things that you can get out of it. And just recently I was listening to this hip hop song this kid showed me at school. And even though I completely dislike hip hop in general, I still have an appreciation for how it was mixed, how well it was mixed, and the rhythm that the rappers were using. So you can always have an appreciation for certain aspects. But back to the director thing, because I digress. I digress. It's so important to have a meeting with the director. And when I was scoring this film called Once Upon a Family, which pretty much told the stories of the Jews before, during, and after the Holocaust, one of the most important things was talking with the director and hearing his stories about, these people who survived the Holocaust, and hearing what he learned out of having these discussions with these people. It was one of the most important things that I could have asked for in that project. Because really, in order to do a film justice, you have to be on the same page as the director. You have to be just as inspired to deliver a product to the audience. You have to be just as inspired to push your own limits and create something that you would have never thought that you could create, but you're going to create. So it's such an unbelievable thing, because us composers, we are always just trying to do something that we never thought we could have done, throw it at people, and just feel everything come in, and just get the amazement out of other people reactions to your music. It's just one of the most inspiring things that us composers really can receive. So that's one of the things that we all push for, to innovate, to create quality, to see the expression and the excitement on other people's faces. We really want our music to do the film justice. And if you're not composing for film, if you're somebody like Thomas Bergerson, who's an unbelievable composer, his music is still his music still creates a soundscape. It creates an atmosphere. It really, and when he goes into writing those pieces, I could of course imagine that for each of those individual pieces, he had an overall idea of the type of landscape he wanted to paint with his music. And that's a really cool thing as well. If you're not film scoring, and if you're just sort of writing epic tracks or stuff like that, don't just try to write the most cliche epic track that you can possibly find. Don't try to go to YouTube, type in epic music, and just repeat what those people are doing. The most important thing is that you listen to all these styles, and you get a taste of all these different composers, and you put it all together, and you just go to your DAW, or you go to your full score paper, or whatever it is that you use, and you put all those things together, and you just create a product that you never would have thought you could do, but you did. And that's one of the most extraordinary feelings once you've done something that you never thought you could do. Game soundtracks, I'm actually going to dive into that right now, because why the hell not? Okay, game soundtracks. So game soundtracks are incredibly more specific than film soundtracks. Game soundtracks, whenever you write a cue, you're more writing a cue for a specific landscape, for a specific location, for a specific, like very, very specific emotion. And the music sort of just creates that ambience and the overall, soundscape of the game so that you will get immersed, because it's so much more important to get immersed in a video game. Well, it's I wouldn't say it's more important at all. I'd say it's more difficult. No. Forget that. I'd say it's easier to get immersed in a game because of the fact that, of course, you are the first person. You're looking through your own eyes. You're walking around. You're making these interactions. And really, what the music needs to do is to not stick out to the point to where you're getting thrown out of that first person view. The most important thing a video game composer can do is to create that ambience and to surround yourself with the music, just like the visuals in the game are surrounding you. So that's the whole point. We have a question here from Austin. How would you go about analyzing a score, either by a film composer like John Williams or one of the classical greats such as Holst, in order to improve your own writing? First of all, I think that is an unbelievable question. So let's sort of talk about that. Okay, so that is an unbelievable thing to be able to do, because when you analyze a score, of course, you pick up different niches from this composer, and you can put those into your own writing style. So analyzing scores is very, very important, and that's something that I've enjoyed doing. Actually, right here, I don't know if you guys know Michael Patty from Cinesamples, but I printed out one of his scores called Liberty, and I've actually been going through and analyzing that score. I mean, I've found some of the most complex harmony in this thing that I never would have thought of even writing, and it's just opened my eyes, incredibly. And has given me a whole nother perspective of how other composers write music, because that's what we're doing when we're looking at other people write music. We are seeing the things that they go to out of just pure instinct, and when we really understand those, we can understand their point of view and how they write and accommodate and put that into our specific style. So analyzing scores is really cool. How you would go by it, quite literally, I would print out the score on some nice full score paper at like a FedEx Kinko's or something, and then I would just go through note by note, mark down the harmony. But one of the most important things before you do any harmonic analyzing or anything, one of the most important things to do is to look for texture. It's to look for the different types of, listen to the track and analyze why this certain instrumentation is creating that specific sound. And it's really understanding how, for example, in the Harry Potter score, I don't know if you guys know this, but when it sounds like the French horn comes in with the da 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 da, that's not a French horn. It's like a mixture of like a bassoon, an alto flute, and an English horn, I think. But you would have never thought it. But if you analyze the score, boom, you can mark that down, and the next time you want to sort of give a little hint of a French horn, but then you want to bring it in with all of its intensity near the maybe the ending of the piece or something, you can use that specific type of instrumentation. Orchestration. So analyzing a score is so cool, and honestly, go back, analyze some Baroque pieces. For example, Stabat Mater. It's one of the coolest pieces when it comes to using sus chords, and that score has helped me so much. So just to tell you guys a little bit about myself so that we can get to the point to where I actually started writing this piece, let's go back all the way to the beginning. Let's go back to 2007, the Christmas of 2007. I got my first guitar, and at that point I started studying how to play instruments. So I studied how to play guitar, how to play drums. I studied a little bit of vocals and bass at one point. I studied to become a musician, and I was actually in a band for the longest time called the Rising Gravity Experience. We played festivals. We recorded a CD in Nashville. I was the age of 14. I recorded my first CD when I was, I believe, 10 years old. So I've always sort of been into music, and I've always been writing music, and I've always been curious about music. And in general, I've always been curious, having to do with, I love, studying stuff like history and politics and science. And I've always been curious about these different types of things. So that really showed through when it comes to my music and all of that type of stuff. Where do you find the scores like Liberty? I will send it to you. Shoot me a direct message or an email, and I will send you the score and everything like that. I'm trying to fix these links down here so that you guys can go to these links. Let's see here. Okay. But yeah, I will send you the score. No problem, man. But yeah, so I was playing in bands for the longest time. Let me just go ahead and Let me go ahead and play you one of the songs that I wrote for this band. It was a rock band. By the way, these are not my pieces of music. These are SoundCloud. I mean, these are the Apple Cloud or whatever, so they aren't my music. Okay, let's see. Let's do this. This was when I was in a rock band. This is me singing too.
I almost can't remember the way that I came to be, but I'll try to face the weather, the way that it affects me. Whoa, yeah, 'cause the way that I see tomorrow is not the way it should be, but I'll try to remember the person I used to be.
But anyways, that's just a little idea. I had a great time in the band. It was really fun playing all those live gigs. I was in a few other bands as well. I was really into the whole rock music thing. I'm incredibly thankful to the fact that my parents sort of immersed me in this world of music at such a young age.